To joint public hearing, Board of Commissioners and the Planning Board, September 19th, 2022. First, we have the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
We have and we need a second.
Second.
All in favor? Agenda approved. So the public hearing, we're open to the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, members of the planning board. Thank you all for being here on this Monday night for this joint public hearing. Tonight we're going to be looking at a rezoning case in the downtown area of Zebulon. I just want to start off by, I know most of you know who I am, but you may not see me as frequent as Mike or some of the other directors. My name's Aaron Chalker. I'm a planner too with the town. So just want to make sure everybody remembers. So the rezoning case, as I said, is in the downtown area. More specifically, it's at property at 125 West Vance Street. This is informally known as the gray warehouse building for the former Whitley Galleries business. So the applicant for this project is the Zebulon Planning Department. So this is a staff-initiated application. And the reason for that is because the boundaries of the DTC zoning district cannot be amended by anyone other than the town. Property owner is James Kenneth Estes. The approximate acreage of the property is 0.18. The current zoning is downtown core DTC, and the proposed zoning district is downtown periphery DTP. And we want to note that this rezoning does not propose any conditions. This is a conventional rezoning application. Notification information. A public hearing sign was posted on the property on August 29th. Public hearing notices were mailed to the property owners within 150 feet of the subject property on the same day, August 29th. An ad was published in the Wake Weekly on September 9th as well as September 16th in accordance with Article 2. So here's the current zoning map of this area of the subject property. You can see the subject property, the bold outline around the property at 125 West Vance Street. Currently, it is within the downtown core zoning district. And you can see here the arrow here pointing to the current zoning district boundary between DTP and DTC. What we're proposing to do is to move that to the east, a little closer towards Arundel Avenue to encompass the warehouse building at 125 West Vance Street. And the reason for this is to have a more logical transition between the downtown core and the downtown periphery. And we'll get into some visual examples of the building and the architecture in a couple slides. Here's the aerial map of the property. Again, the property is shown with the bold line surrounding it. You'll see the railroad track to the south of the property, and it fronts West Vance Street. Buildings here that are shaded in blue or characterized by historic brick storefronts that are more in character with the DTC district. You'll see some vertical integration of the buildings, mostly brick construction, masonry construction, a lot of storefronts and windows. And then the orange shade here, which is where the subject property is located, they're warehouse-type buildings that are more in character with the DTP district. The building at the subject property was actually constructed in the year 1983 per the Wake County tax record. So it's a little bit newer construction than what you typically see throughout the downtown core. So we'll move into some of the site images that staff took. So here you can see, this is the subject property on the left. You can see the metal siding, sort of a different material than the traditional brick storefronts, characteristic of the core of downtown. And there's also the notice of public hearing that staff posted on site. This is another image of the subject property, looking more from the center of West Vance Street. You can see that, again, the metal material of the building, very low roof pitch. It's not really vertically integrated at all. It's only one story. There's no windows at all. There's really only door and metal siding. Something that we believe is not in character with the downtown core. This image here is looking at the building just to the left of this warehouse building. This is the adjacent property that is in the DTC district, and you can see some notable differences. This is a brick storefront with some window cutouts and as well as a glass door. This is more of the traditional storefront look versus the warehouse building. This picture is taken to the right of the subject property. This is also a warehouse building, and it is located in the DTP district, which is what we are proposing for the subject property. You can see that it's also a one-story building, not a lot, a couple of windows, but not a lot, not really storefront type. There's a garage door, and it's a loading dock. The image here, you can see the subject property on the left side. This is looking away from the center of downtown, down West Vance Street. You can see that there's a couple of different warehouse buildings. The building, see if I can get my mouse here. The building on the right side of the image is also a warehouse building that's across the street from the subject property. And it is also located in DTP zoning district. So it's a similar characteristics in architecture. And as you proceed down Vance Street, you'll see some single-use small businesses, some single-family residential, more of a transitional area away from the downtown core. This image here is also standing in front of the subject property, but it's looking back towards the center of downtown. And you can see the difference in the vertical buildings. There's multiple stories. They're mostly brick or masonry material, and a lot more windows. So we also wanted to put these side by side just so you could see another snapshot of the differences in character when looking, standing in front of this property and looking at the property. You can see that looking away from downtown, there's a lot of warehouse buildings, more transitional to single-tenant uses and single-family dwellings. Looking back towards the center of downtown, it's more characterized by mixed use vertically as well as the traditional architecture of the brick. So now we're going to talk about some of the uses that will be permitted with this rezoning. All the permitted uses in the current DTC zoning will also be permitted in the proposed DTP. So if you were to approve this application down the line, there would be no loss in the uses that are currently permitted. There would only be some that would be added. So some of those additional uses that are permitted in the DTP, we provided some examples here of things that would potentially fit this property well. The first being warehouse storage, which is currently not permitted in DTC, but would be permitted in DTP. This lends itself to the warehouse type building in which was constructed. Another example is indoor private recreation would be permitted. Things like a bowling alley, or like a similar bowling alley with an arcade, something like that. And it's my understanding that there has been some public comment recently about the need for that in terms of some of the younger teenagers or the younger adults in terms of activities for folks to do. So that's just an example there. Research and development would also be permitted on the site. Flex space, which is very generic use, but what it means is it's a very mixed-use type facility that would include office use, light manufacturing, warehousing, things of that nature, all in one building. And the last example we have is school vocational, something like a trade school would also be permitted. All other uses that would be permitted in the DCP can be found in attachment 8 of your packet. So now we'll move into discussion on the comprehensive plan. Currently shown on the screen is the future land use and character map. You can see, similar to the zoning map, the subject property is within the urban downtown core. And what staff is proposing is an amendment to this map to move the property from downtown core to urban downtown mixed use in terms of its future land use. The property is more transitional and is overall not in character with the urban downtown core. And you may ask the question, why are we looking to amend the future land use? And from its original boundary that was put forth by the consultants. And one thing that we believe is that the current boundary is uniform in terms of shape. It's a straight line to the property across the street, and it's uniform in that way, but we don't think it's logical in terms of on-the-ground use of the property and character. All those buildings were grouped together, at one time when it was Whitley Galleries, it was a block of the furniture store. And so maybe that kind of, lends itself to why it was grouped in with that. But really now, we think that the character of it is more of the periphery. So now we'll touch on some fiscal impacts of the rezoning. Property is more likely to be occupied if rezoned based on some of the compatible uses in the DTP that would become available. If the property does become occupied, there can be an increase in economic based on jobs. There can be a direct tax benefit from increased tax value with site improvements with a new tenant or a new property owner. There's also potential for sales tax revenue, depending on what type of business were to come in. There would also be a reduction in code enforcement actions as opposed to if the property were to remain vacant for an extended period of time. Things like tall grass and weeds and litter. Staff recommends seeking public input during a joint public hearing and referring the matter to the planning board for recommendation. Are there any questions from the board?
Yes.
Commissioner Baxter?
Thank you. So is there a reason why you, being the representative from the planning board, didn't list more of the uses? Because from what I see here, we can't really say that it's going to be used for a research facility or for storage, but it could be used for any one of these on attachment 8, such as an auction house or a car wash or a drug and alcohol treatment facility or a convenience store or a park and ride facility or a self-service storage. And then that's not including all of the uses that would be special use permits, such as tattoo studios, ABC stores, adult daycare centers, blood and tissue collection sites, if this is approved, I'm assuming that it's approved for all of these uses listed on here, not just the ones that you have decided to include, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
And, you know, I'd like to speak to your question too. That's a really good question. You know, one thing about the special use permits is that it would come back before the board for consideration. So those uses, you know, would definitely be looked at with a fine-tooth comb by you all, by staff, of course. Some of the other uses too that you have concerns with also, they would have to go through the site plan process through the technical review committee. And with the current configuration of the property, we realize that property can change, but right now there's not a whole lot that can be done with that site in terms of some of the other uses.
Commissioner Baxter?
So you've said that the particular building is not in character with the downtown core, but it's not as if if we were to rezone this, it would fit more into the character of our town. It's still going to remain the same building, correct?
I mean, the building could potentially change.
Okay.
Commissioner Baxter?
Isn't there a brick building directly across the street from this subject building?
Correct.
And that building that is brick would remain in the downtown core, but then it would just be facing something that was now located in the downtown periphery?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Laws? Commissioner Harrison? No. Commissioner Clark? No. Commissioner Miles? Okay, hearing none. Are there any questions from the planning board?
I still don't quite understand why staff is recommending this. Why don't rezonings typically come from an applicant who is looking to purchase or lease this building and make those changes, and they're looking to change their use for it? Why the staff? Why now?
That's a good question. Typically, it does come from a landowner or somebody who's under contract to purchase it. In this case, the DTC district cannot be amended by a landowner or a citizen. It can only be amended by the town.
Okay.
And that's because it's such a concentrated district, within the downtown area. It's very small, and it's it's based on character, architecture, and the intensity of mixed use downtown. And the planning director has the authority to initiate an application just as a citizen.
And is there a reason the building owner is not here for this joint public hearing? It's his building that we're potentially changing the use of.
I can't speak to that.
Mike Tamano?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a question, but I think I can speak to that a little bit, being familiar with the building in question. It's actually straddling two parcels, and the building structure currently, half of it is in the DTC and half of it is in the DTP. So one of them has to be amended to make it whole. So I think this is what we're trying to solve right now, is that.
Why wasn't this brought to us?
Yeah.
And presented like that?
I believe it's shown on the map. I'll go back here. Sorry. So shown on this map, you can see the boundary of the subject property. When I say subject property, I was meaning like the address of the property. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that. So the building does encroach onto the adjacent parcel.
Commissioner Baxter?
So by changing So the dark green building to the left of the subject property is, I believe, what you're speaking to, Mr. Germano, that part of it is in the downtown periphery and part of it is in the downtown core. So the majority of the building that you're bringing before us, well, actually all of it in the light green, is currently in the downtown core, and you want both of those to be in the downtown periphery.
Correct. So
No, not correct?
No. Aaron, I'll help you on this one. Just from the structure itself straddles two parcels. It's currently trying to be replatted. And in doing so, there are two properties that are assigned to one building.
Right, that's the,
So part of it is in the dark green, and then the part is highlighted right now is the other half of the building.
So the building is straddling the dark and light green line, is what you're saying. So this bold outline
Make any sense to me?
would encompass the whole warehouse building itself.
so you can see the line here. This is the parcel line.
But the whole building is from the bold line down to the other parcel line. Is that correct?
My understanding that this is the building that we're rezoning, and that, you know, to simplify it, that we're moving this zoning district boundary
this is
to the east
extremely-
to encompass the entire building into.
To provide clarification, the edge of the gray warehouse building is located approximately where this cursor is going up and down.
Oh,
I'm sorry, say that again?
The gray warehouse building that's in question is approximately where the cursor is going up and down in this location.
Okay.
This portion is the portion that is subject to tonight's rezoning.
So what, I'm sorry, what is the lighter green, or the lighter line in the light green box?
You're talking about right
Right there,
here?
yeah, what is that?
That's a parcel line. It's a property line.
Okay, so that gray warehouse is straddling the bold highlighted block plus some of the dark green block?
Correct.
And it should, if it was on its own piece of parcel, it should end right where that lighter line is. Is that what you're saying? Right there?
no, it has to go all the way to the bold to include the whole building.
Currently,
I'm just trying to gather where the parcel is.
yeah, currently the parcel line and the zoning line do not line up.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to reconcile that as well. And so this will encompass the entire building into the dark green DTP. And it'll also follow the parcel line.
And where you have your cursor right now, the right-hand or easternmost, that line right there, is that the end of the building on that side?
Yes, that's my understanding.
So that would bring the building into the same zone. Gotcha.
Commissioner Baxter?
So they can get this replatted and then come before us again with this?
They can.
Okay,
I mean,
thank
but
you.
action can be taken now because the zoning map can be amended without any plat.
This just seems very confusing with these multiple properties and straddling
I'm sorry, I
buildings.
can't understand you.
This seems confusing with multiple properties and straddling buildings, that this is very confusing to have to like try and work through, especially since there's going to be such a difference in the approved uses.
To provide a bit of clarification, no, the property owner cannot come back forth even after it's replatted. And the reason is there is a stipulation in the Unified Development Ordinance that actually prohibits property owners from making modifications to the downtown core zoning district.
Oh.
The purpose and the context of that district is to preserve what is there, the structural integrity, the making sure it's preserving the pedestrian or oriented uses. So platting does not change zoning. and the only way to move this line is for a town-initiated zoning request.
Commissioner Miles?
No, to my understanding, Mike, I have a quick question for you. It seems as if what we're hearing, this building already has a purpose in mind. Am I to assume that the reason for rezoning it?
No, it does
So,
not.
1 second, please. So as the building sits, it won't sell. I'm to believe that this building will not sell the way it sits now and currently zoned. That's what I'm taking from this, or am I wrong on that?
I'm not a real estate agent, so I can't speak to that.
Okay.
But the marketability, especially in terms of some of the uses that folks have expressed interest in moving to the town, include things such as a bowling alley or an arcade, uses that the public has expressed interest in, especially in close proximity to downtown. This opens up those opportunities, but nobody has approached the town regarding any of the uses, whether in the downtown core or the downtown periphery at this point in time.
So right here, potentially about 150 uses. Nobody's approached for the use of that building, correct? That's what you're saying, but you're not a real estate agent, so do you know who has approached, or how does that work for me? Help me understand your position in it.
Nobody has approached the town to put any uses within this building.
Okay, so we're assuming that it's not going to sell then, so you're telling me that it won't sell?
I'm not a real estate agent. I can't speak
Okay, so
to
why are
that.
we rezoning it then? If that's the case, let's give it the potential to sell and see what it's like before we start rezoning. We have yet to move on it, but yet we already rezoning something. That discretion to Aaron's is up to you. So I would like your justification on rezoning it, other than just in case it's more marketable. Give me something a little bit more tangible, something more rational for me.
The exterior of the building. The exterior of the building is not like the other buildings in the downtown core. The downtown core has a specific character, demeanor, architectural style about it. This is in total contrast to that architectural style, character, or demeanor.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Baxter?
I believe that my statement was misinterpreted, or perhaps I wasn't clear. Once it's replatted, the town could come back for the rezoning.
Correct, if it was replatted, correct.
Okay. Well, I'm assuming that Mr. Germano was correct in saying that it's going through the replatting process. And so once that platting process is done and this map is a little bit more clear that we're looking at, the rezoning could come back to us.
Good.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any more questions from the planning board? Oh, Commissioner Laux?
A question and then a request. Number one, I assume when this was zoned, we were looking at properties and not buildings. That's why this oversight was missed?
I can't really speak to at the time when it was rezoned. I wasn't part of the department. But as I was stating kind of on the comprehensive land use slide, I think that it's a more uniform shape is kind of what they were going for. That's why, it's rectangular. It doesn't appear to follow any actual building lines, and especially on this side of the street, with it straddling the building.
All right, and then the request is when you add presentation slides to your presentation, could they be included in our packet? Because you had a couple slides you showed tonight that are not in our packet.
Sure. I apologize for that.
Any,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Don.
Well,
Don?
sort of to what you were just addressing. So I'm just trying to think, moving forward, as maybe additional cases come before the boards, like directly across the street, is that parcel not in the same situation where half of the parcel is in one, the downtown core, and the other half is in the periphery?
That was going to be my question.
And will that not come up again?
Correct, yeah.
Because I'm sorry.
No, you're.
It seems like the core was defined more on just a specific distance from downtown rather than on specific buildings or parcels. So therefore, you wind up in a situation where one parcel is split into two different pieces, and then is this going to come up again? And what we do tonight could potentially impact what we do in the future.
Sure. I think going back to Commissioner Baxter's question about the brick building across the street, I'm not sure if that building across the street would be proposed to be amended as likely as this one would be, given the architecture. But that's a very good question.
But
David?
According to your map, though, the property line also is not on the zoning line, so to speak. So is it another situation where the building is over those property lines?
I'm not sure about it, the property across the street. We'd have to look into that.
Commissioner Clark?
I think on that small one across the street, I want to say there is like an opening between that big warehouse and the brick facade of the other one.
It's connected. Almost by, I think that-
There's something, I don't care.
Commissioner Miles?
No, you're fine. See, I was just kind of reiterating what you said.
Commissioner Laux?
Yeah, if you go back, isn't there an aerial map of that area where we can look at that building across the street?
Let's see.
So it looks like there's a vacant space there between the two structures. So if I could have overlaid the zoning, yeah, we could see it, but I don't have the zoning overlaid on this map. But it looks like potentially that the area here that's in question is the vacant space that's located in this image. But we can look into that.
Any more questions, either board? Okay, hearing none. We will now take public comment. Anyone wants to come up, speak to in the podium to the left? I don't think we have any. Do we have anyone online or email wish to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wish to speak neither? Hearing none. If there's no one else wishing to speak, I will close the public hearing and refer the matter to the planning board. We need a motion,
Make a motion to adjourn?
and we need a second.
Second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.